morning, everyone. And everyone that has a heart should be here, yeah? The Bible says, keep the heart with all diligence, because out of it are the issues of life. What are the issues of life? The blood. The blood is what keeps the body alive. My toes are only alive because there's blood going through it. My fingers are only alive because of the blood going through it. And in our hydrotherapy seminar this morning, we looked at that's what hot and cold treatments do. They move blood, because anywhere in the body you want to bring healing, you just bring more blood, because blood has the red blood cells, which have the oxygen and the nutrition and the water and take away waste, and blood also has the white blood cells. So the pump that pumps the blood is very important, and that pump is the heart. So how can we strengthen the heart? Now there are two things we need to look at here. We need to look at the blood going in and out of the heart, because if the blood is kept thin, and if the blood is moving efficiently and effectively, then that makes it easier for the heart to pump it. That makes sense. So the first thing we're going to have a look at is the blood. How can you keep the blood nice and thin? There is no need to take rat poison, I mean warfarin. And there is no need to take aspirin. Aspirin and aspro, the research is showing now, they cause brain bleeds and eye bleeds. Brain bleeds is contributing to Alzheimer's, eye bleeds is contributing to the deterioration of our eyesight. But you can keep the blood nice and thin. Let's make a list of blood thinners. This is a thicker one. Blood thinners. What keeps the blood thin? Now you're going to love this blood thinner because it's very, very cheap. Water. It is true. It is the best blood thinner that you can take. Well, how come people that are drinking water don't have thin blood? Well, if a person's drinking water, they must be sure that they're drinking adequate water. This is the water loss in a day. So out of your kidneys, we have 1.5 litre loss. Out of your skin, 0.5 of a litre loss. Out of your colon, a 0.3 of a litre loss. And out of your lungs, a 0.2 of a litre loss. So that equals 2.5 litre loss in a 24-hour period. Now, the half litre can be replaced with herb teas, your fruits, your vegetables, but the 2 litres must be replaced with water and water alone. The good news is you don't have to drink it all in half an hour. You've got 24 hours to drink that 2 litres of water. That's pretty reasonable, isn't it? Now, obviously, 8 of those hours we're sound asleep, so we're not drinking. But you've still got a lot of time to drink water. My suggestion is go to bed with a glass of water next to your bed. And as soon as you wake up, half a glass. And then you might go to the bathroom. And then you might come back, have another half a glass. And then you might do what I do and pray. And I've got a lot of children and a lot of grandchildren and a lot of people to pray for. And then I'll have another half glass. And then I might read my Bible, something inspiration for that, have another half a glass. And then I'll put my joggers on and I might have another half glass. And then I'll go for my high intensity run, and when I get back I really want another half glass. You know, it's easy for me because I usually wake about 5:30. That's my favourite wake time. And then I can fit sometimes 3, sometimes 4 glasses of water before I eat at around 7:30. Wow, so that's a lot of my water done, yeah? Now the best time to drink water is between meals, because if you drink with meals, you can water down your gastric juices, as you'll find out tomorrow night when we go on a journey through your gastrointestinal tract. And you'll see when we get to the stomach, it's acid. And you put water in acid, what happens to the acid? It neutralizes it. So try and stop drinking water half an hour before the meal and resume about an hour and a half, 2 hours after the meal. If you are fully hydrated when you sit to eat, you will not need to drink with your meals. Most people drink with their meals because they sit to eat dehydrated. And it's such an American habit and an Aussie habit. Is it a New Zealand habit? One lady that came to our retreat, she said, every time I sit to eat, I keep reaching for that glass of water. And on Saturday morning, I'll show you how you can rewire your brain, how you can actually change your habits. So it's approximately 2 litres of water in a day. That's absolutely vital. You've just got to find out how to get it in. And your body can utilize it better if you take it in little by little by little. But there is another way you can better utilize your water, and that is by using the whole salt. But aren't we supposed to stop salt? Isn't salt bad for high blood pressure? Let me give you the salt story. The highest concentration of sodium is found in seawater. And seawater contains 92 minerals. It's called an isotonic solution because it is the exact same mineral balance and proportion as is found in the body, in the blood. In fact, in the war, the Navy would transfuse with seawater if they didn't have blood, because very quickly the body can convert it to blood. Of those 92 minerals, 30% is made up of sodium, and 50% is made up of chloride. And so what man often does, as you can see, they're the first crystals formed. Those first crystals are scooped off, bleached white, aluminium's added to it, there's your table salt. So the table salt on the supermarket shelf is actually a dangerous salt. We need to be taking salt into our body the way it's found in nature, with all the other minerals. Celtic salt and Himalayan salt contain 82 minerals. So Celtic salt, and you can usually buy it at the health food shop, 82 minerals. Where are the other 10? They're in such pico proportion that's barely measurable that it's inevitable that some are lost in the evaporation process. But hey, 82 is pretty close to 92, isn't it? And that Celtic salt has 3 magnesiums. It has magnesium bromide, it contains magnesium sulfate, and magnesium chloride. Magnesium is a water-hungry molecule, and that's why that salt is usually quite moist. Now let's go to the CBD and have a look at what happens here. This is the cell. Now the cell has a bilayered membrane around it. And the way to get water into the cell is by taking magnesium. So when you take a crystal of Celtic salt on your tongue, already your mucous membranes are absorbing the minerals into the blood. The blood takes that magnesium to the cell. You drink your water, and that magnesium pulls the water inside the cell. It's a water-hungry molecule. That's the quickest way to hydrate the human body, is to put that crystal of Celtic salt on your tongue, do a little chomp, and then drink it down. Many people are sick because they're dehydrated, and yet some of them are drinking a lot of water. And the water's going straight through. The water is not getting inside the cell. That's why the best way to have your water, and beside my bed I have a little bit of that Celtic salt. I wake up, I have the Celtic salt, I have half a glass of water. As I said, I get out of bed, I have another glass of water. Best way for your body to utilize that water is to have little by little by little by little by little. And at the beginning of every one of your 8 glasses, have that Celtic salt. Now the highest concentration of mineral outside the cell is sodium. The highest concentration inside the cell is potassium. And there are sodium-potassium pumps in the bilayered membrane around the cell. And the pumps are constantly basically going like that, balancing the sodium and potassium levels in and out of the cell. Now, if someone's having a lot of table salt, and remember what table salt contains, 2 minerals, That's what table salt contains, just those two minerals. And if someone's having a lot of table salt, those 2 minerals are so harsh, if you were to inject them straight into the person, they would die. Well, what's normal saline solution? It has got a couple of more minerals and it's greatly watered down. But if that sodium chloride was to go straight into the veins, the person would die. And when a person is sprinkling table salt all over their food, they're such harsh minerals, those 2 by themselves, they kill the taste buds. Have you noticed? The people shake it all over the food. They haven't even tasted whether it needs it or not. Well, no wonder. Their taste buds are dying. When you put the Celtic salt on the food, it awakens the taste buds. It's a delicious salt. So let's say someone's putting table salt on everything, and of course it's got no minerals in it at all. Sodium levels are rising. Potassium is found in all your fresh fruits and vegetables. And let's say the person is busy, they haven't got time to chew an apple or eat the fresh fruit and vegetables, they just eat the fast food. Potassium levels are dropping. Now sodium is in small amounts inside the cell. So what's happening inside the cell now? Sodium levels are rising, potassium levels are dropping. Osmosis and diffusion happens when the largest concentration merges into the lowest, which starts to happen in here because potassium levels are too low. And then the cell swells. What's that called? High blood pressure. The doctor is right. Table salt can greatly contribute to high blood pressure. And so what's the person told to do now? Stop the salt. Now, sodium levels are going too low. And when the sodium levels inside the cell go too low, the cell swells. What's that? High blood pressure again. You see, both extremes are unsafe. The table salt is dangerous because of the imbalance of minerals. No salt is dangerous because did you know that sodium is the 3rd most vital element needed for life? You'll find that in every anatomy and physiology book, every biology book, every chemistry book. The 3rd most vital element needed for life. What's the first? Oxygen. What's the 2nd? Water. What's the 3rd? Sodium. What's the 4th? Potassium. So a salt-free diet is a very unscientific diet. It's a dangerous diet because you think about it. We cry, seawater. We sweat, seawater. We urinate, seawater. I haven't tasted that, but I don't think anyone has. But baby swims in utero in seawater. We need salt. Every time we urinate, cry, perspire, we're losing it. And we need to replace it. And we need to replace it the way it is found in nature with all of the other minerals. You'll hear so many different things, won't you? And that's why I like to come from fact and basic common sense. And what's a baked potato without salt? I ask you. Our palate tells us we need the salt. Now this salt, with all of its minerals, enhances the food, brings out the flavour in the food. This salt overpowers everything and kills the taste buds, so basically you need more and more and more. And it brings this big imbalance. That explains why the table salt is not a good salt. It's a dangerous salt and shouldn't be taken, especially if the person's got high blood pressure. So looking at this, I'd like to start listing the causes of high blood pressure. So one of the causes of high blood pressure is table salt. Another cause of high blood pressure is no salt, as I have explained. Lining the gastrointestinal tract, especially as we'll see tomorrow, are villi. And on the villi, there are receptor sites for the glucose that's broken down from the food that we eat. The glucose comes into the receptor site and there's a carrier there. And the carrier will take the glucose through to the blood. But the carrier says, I will not accept you, glucose, unless you come with a molecule of sodium. When sodium is present, then the carrier will take the glucose through to the blood. Now, I have memorized this from the anatomy and physiology book, so I could give it to you from the horse's mouth. Sodium is the main transport system of glucose across the brush border wall and into the blood. So you can see a salt-free diet's crazy. If someone's on a salt-free diet, some of their glucose can't even get into the blood. It ends up in the little house. So salt is important, but it needs to be taken in its balanced form. And the Bible talks about salt. It's in Matthew 5, chapter 5, verse 13. It says, "Ye are the salt of the earth. If the salt hath lost its savour, wherewith shall it be salted? It is henceforth good for nothing but to be cast out and trodden under foot of men." It's Old English. I love the Old English. Very poetic, easy to memorise. How does the salt lose its savour? I'd like to suggest that this salt has lost its savour. Its savour is all the other minerals. And what does the Bible say? It's henceforth good for nothing, but to be cast out and trodden under foot of men. Well, there's one use for it. When we're at Misty Mountain in the wet season, there are leeches. And if you get a leech on you and put the table salt on it, it'll fall off. I can't think of anything else. I don't suppose you have leeches here, no? Too cold. So that's the salt issue. And my endeavour was to explain these things to you so that you will no more be confused about the salt. In his book, The Calcium Lie, Dr. Robert Thompson, he maintained should we have that little bit of salt just to replace the minerals that we lost yesterday in our urine, in our sweat. We need salt. Let's continue the causes of high blood pressure. Another cause of high blood pressure can be a vitamin D deficiency. How so? Well, calcium is a very important mineral. And calcium cannot get into the cell by itself. Calcium needs vitamin D. And when vitamin D is present, calcium is pulled into the cell. And when calcium's pulled into the cell, all the other minerals piggyback on the back of calcium. And this is why calcium is called the king. Because calcium's called the king, because when calcium gets in, all the other minerals get in, it's been misunderstood to the point where people think if they want strong bones, they've got to take calcium supplements. No. Calcium hardens cement, but it doesn't harden bones, because bones aren't made of calcium. Bones are made of minerals. Bones are made of 12 minerals and 64 trace minerals. Well, where do we find those minerals? In the Celtic salt, in its perfect form. Where else? Dark green leafy vegetables. Look at the size of the bones of the cow, of the orangutan, of the elephant. They're all vegetarian creatures and they've got very big bones. Where do they get their minerals for their bones from? Dark green leafy vegetables. We should eat dark green leafy vegetables every day. And you do not lose your minerals when you cook your vegetables. You will only lose your minerals if you cook your vegetables in water and throw the water away. There's all your minerals. Use waterless cooking. Put the tiniest little bit of water in, put it on a low heat with the lid on and let it slowly cook. And then use it all. But with spinach, silver beet, you don't even need to put water in there, do you? So much water comes out of it. When you cook vegetables in their own juice, you get a lovely flavour. So vitamin D deficiency can cause high blood pressure because if there's a deficiency in vitamin C, the calcium and the minerals can't get in. And what the body does, it builds up pressure to try and force it in. Another cause of high blood pressure can be wheat and sugar. How so? We explained last night. You see, wheat and sugar both break down to glucose, and as we looked at last night in the diabetes lecture, high amounts quickly. And glucose cannot get into the cell by itself. It must have insulin. But if the pancreas is worn out because the person's eating so much sugar and so much wheat, then the insulin is depleted and the glucose can't get into the cell. Can you see what's happening here? The person's mineral deficient, vitamin D deficient, insulin deficient, and this is the CBD. This is where all these nutrients are required. And the cell says, we've got a problem here. How can we get it in? We're lacking insulin, we're lacking magnesium, we're lacking vitamin D. The body says, oh no, we'll just force it in. What's that? Blood pressure. So can you see high blood pressure has many causes? Many causes. Wheat and sugar are a contributing factor to high blood pressure. But because of the hybridization of the wheat and the high intolerance of it, heart arrhythmia happens. Whenever the body takes something in that it has an allergy to, it changes the heartbeat. I might have spelt this wrong. Is that a Y? Sorry, you've got to look at it, and it might be spelt wrong. Something like that. It's easier to write that than unstable heartbeat. What also causes high blood pressure is not only the magnesium deficient, not only the vitamin D deficiency, and not only the insulin deficiency, which is caused by the high wheat, high sugar, but also inactivity. Inactivity can cause high blood pressure. Most doctors today will agree that exercise has a powerful effect on the strengthening of the heart. In fact, it's the only thing that will strengthen the heart, is exercise. It's a not negotiable subject. You just got to find out how you can fit it into your day. And the most powerful exercise for the heart is the high-intensity interval training. High-intensity interval training. As the name implies, they're intervals of high intensity, intervals of recovery for a cycle, often of anywhere between 3 and 6. So the high intensity can be 20 to 30 seconds. Have you tried it? Did you feel like you were dying? A recovery time of 2 to 3 minutes, and done for a cycle of anywhere between 3 and 6. 3 is a good maintenance dose. 6 is a great one if you want to turn things around, and you can turn things around quite quickly. Most of the research has been done on exercise bikes. It's a lot easier to go 30 seconds on an exercise bike than run up a hill for 30 seconds, which is probably what I usually do. You can do it swimming. Can't swim? Exercise bike, don't have a bike, can't do the bike. Everyone can do the rebounder. And the rebounder, you start with just little jigging and then you start to jump, jump, jump. The rebounder exercise is the only exercise that strengthens every single cell in the body. And your heart muscle is made up of cells. As you do this high intensity, your heart gets stronger and stronger. Your breath becomes, your lungs start to take in your air a lot deeper. Every muscle in the body is getting more exercise. And as I showed you before, when this cell has oxygen, it's going to give you 18 times more energy. That means every cell, 18 times more energy. Every cell in the body has more energy, and every cell in your heart has more energy. You can totally turn high blood pressure around even just by exercise. So inactivity is one of the causes. Inactivity causes the blood to pool in the internal organs. When you start moving, it causes the blood to be taken out to the extremities. Another cause of high blood pressure is dehydration. In dehydration, little capillary networks can shut down to maintain full blood volume in the major arteries. And when those little capillary networks shut down, it actually causes more pressure on the heart. So how do we turn high blood pressure around? start taking the Celtic salt. If you're used to no salt, start slowly. Because one of the body's amazing abilities in keeping us alive is the ability to adapt and adjust. And it'll adapt and adjust to no salt. And so you can get it out of that and adapt and adjust to having the salt, and having the salt in its balanced form. Vitamin D deficiency. Whenever you see that sun, run out. But if you have a shower and wash with soap just before you have the sun, you won't get sun. You see, the ultraviolet rays from the sun convert a form of cholesterol just under the skin to vitamin D. What's converted to vitamin D? Cholesterol. Isn't cholesterol the cause of high blood pressure? Isn't cholesterol the cause of heart disease? It is not. What I'd like to do at this point is show you what cholesterol is. Because the old proverb, Proverb 14 verse 6, states, knowledge is easy to him that understand. Let me give you an understanding. The liver is the organ that makes cholesterol. Here's the liver living under your right rib. And 80% of the cholesterol that your liver makes is made from glucose. And 20% of the cholesterol that your liver makes is made from fat. Do you know what that means? It's not the butter on the bread, it's the bread under the butter. It's not the olive oil on the pasta, it's the pasta under the olive oil. There are two main types of cholesterol in the body. One is high density lipoprotein, called HDL, and the other is low density lipoprotein, LDL. High density lipoprotein is called the good guy, because it carries away excess cholesterol back to the liver. That's why it's called the good guy. It's said to clear the arteries. It's the good guy. LDL is the repairer and the rebuilder. So you're always going to find LDL wherever there's a need to repair and rebuild. But LDL does something else. It delivers cholesterol to the brain. And the brain loves cholesterol. Do you know what the highest cholesterol food on the planet is? Breast milk. And the reason for that is, especially in the first 2 months of life, because that developing brain must have cholesterol, must have fat for it to develop properly. And if a farmer has a cow whose mother died in childbirth, they must find another cow who's just had a baby to give to that calf, or you will ask the farmer, that calf will ever be sickly, because it didn't get that very, very rich milk in the first, month of life. Let's go to the artery and look at how these two work together. So here's the artery. And because of its low density, LDL is always on the edge. Because of its high density, HDL is always in the middle. Now let's say a person's smoking cigarettes. It's well known that those 4,000 chemicals in each cigarette have the ability to weaken and damage the arterial wall. Something else that can weaken and damage the arterial wall is mercury. And there are 3 places we can be subjected to mercury today. One is fish, the other is mercury fillings in the mouth, and the other is the flu vaccine, because the flu vaccine contains mercury. And mercury can damage the arterial wall. What can also damage the arterial wall is yeast or mold that's in the blood. That can damage it. And if a person's on a high sugar, high wheat diet, alcohol, that just feeds the yeast, poking more holes. Who's going to plug up the holes, students? The repairer and the rebuilder. And so the repairer and the rebuilder comes along and plugs up the hole to keep you and I alive. Now what's supposed to happen is the person's supposed to eat nourishing food, lots of minerals, greens, plant proteins and healthy fats, and those nutrients will help to rebuild those holes. And at the same time, the person's supposed to get out of the mouldy house. They're supposed to get the mercury fillings out and start eating lentils instead of fish, and start running up and down hills every morning and use the flu bomb instead of taking the flu vaccine, and stop smoking. And when all of the things that harm the arterial wall are stopped, then HDL comes along and carries away the excess. Can you see how these two cholesterols work together in maintaining our little capillaries and channels that are carrying our blood? But many people don't realise the danger of mercury. And I know some people have said, oh, I was going to have my mercury out, but my dentist said, that's a waste of money. There's nothing wrong with mercury. I've got mercury. Mercury's a neurotoxin. Wow. It's one of the main causes of multiple sclerosis. It kills brain cells and eats away at the myelin sheath. One man said, I've had it in my mouth for 40 years. It's done me no harm. You don't know. Those myelin sheath can be half eaten away and you hardly know it. But it gets to 2/3 eaten away, and then coordination goes. And the brain's, you can't remember anything. Oh, you've just got Alzheimer's. As you'll see when I do the lectures on Saturday on the mind, there are reasons for Alzheimer's. Newton's third law of motion states that to every action there is an equal and an opposite reaction. Things don't just happen. There's always a reason. So let's say the person doesn't know the dangers of mercury. They don't realise that the fish has mercury. They don't realise, although they should, that the cigarettes are killing them. And so the damage continues. It continues. It continues. And what's happening inside the artery? The build-up's getting bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger. When I was a nurse and I worked in the operating theatre, and I assisted for a bypass operation, and the artery that we cut out of the heart and replaced with an artery from the leg, and by the way, how long's that one going to last? If you don't turn the tap off, you're still going to be mopping up in the other corner. And when he was all stitched up, the surgeon got the artery and got tweezers and started to pull this white gristle out. We say, what is that? Cholesterol, yeah? And so now we say cholesterol causes heart disease. That's like saying the fire trucks are causing the fire. Well, they must cause the fire. They're always there. Can you see that? A friend of mine, his name's Dr. David Harris. He's a chiropractor. He's a cyclist. He's 58. He goes overseas twice a year, does 200k rides. He's a vegetarian. His doctor was suspicious of the breathlessness he was getting at times, so he did a test on his heart, 90% occlusion of his arteries. He was rushed in for a bypass. He rang me up and he said, Barb, it's genetics. Genetics loads the gun, but lifestyle pulls the trigger. I said, David, go to my YouTube and watch my lecture on the liver where I talk about cholesterol. And he rang me up a week later. He said, Barbara, in 2004, I was trying to put on muscle and I was eating swordfish 3 times a day. What's swordfish got in it? Pregnant women are told, don't eat swordfish because it's the fish that is the highest in mercury. You see, mercury is accumulative. It's bioaccumulative. You know what that means? The bigger the fish, the more the accumulation of mercury. And the longer it's in your mercury fillings in your mouth, the more it is accumulating in your tissues. Can you see what happened with David? The mercury, in fact, after 1 year of this diet, he got mercury poisoning. What's happening in his arteries? Holes, 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 holes. And so the liver's getting yelled at, quick, more cholesterol, more cholesterol, more cholesterol. Can you see that? To plug up the holes to keep David alive. Aha. That's why we all should be private investigators, investigating why these things are so. Cholesterol doesn't cause heart disease. It's damage to the arterial wall, but it's much easier to blame the cholesterol than the cigarettes or the mercury in the fish are in my mouth. And the fisheries department go to great lengths to protect the public from realising how much mercury is in their fish. And the dentists go to great lengths to make people think there's nothing wrong with the mercury. About 50% of dentists are still using mercury. It doesn't even look nice. Hey, the white fillings look much nicer. But the new dentists are taught that mercury is a poisoning. So hopefully in another 20 years, all dentists will be using the white fillings. And most people don't realise that in the flu vaccine there is mercury. It's called thimerosal. Have a look. In fact, if they're pushing it on, you say, sorry, I'm allergic to mercury. Are you? Every human being on the planet is. And the Hep B vaccine that babies are given at birth has mercury in it. Check it out. Check it out. Find out. You can find out. And it's called thimerosal. That's what the mercury's called in the vaccine. It was banned in childhood vaccinations in 1998. So it's not in the childhood vaccinations, but it's in that new one. We need to know where these mercury is being hidden because it's a neurotoxin. There is no safe dose of it. That's a good one-liner for your dentist. There is no safe dose of mercury. It's a neurotoxin. Now, when those brain cells are dead, sorry, gone. They do not rebuild. So we've got to look after the brain cells that we have. Now, if you're questioning what I'm saying, I'm glad you question what I say, because we need proof of this. So I'm going to write down a few doctors who have written books on the subject. Dr. Dwight Lundell is a cardiovascular surgeon. He's performed 10,000 bypasses, and he's written a book called The Cholesterol Lie. Dr. Malcolm Kendrick, I'll write that one down for you too. He's a British cardiologist. And this is a statement that he says in his book, and his book's called The Great Cholesterol Con. Dr. Malcolm Kendrick. He says, for the first time, normal levels of a normal vital body substance is being called a disease. For the first time, normal levels. What's a normal level of cholesterol? 7? What are we told now? What are we told 7 is? Too high. Normal levels of a normal vital body substance is being called a disease. For the first time. A normal vital body substance. You cannot get your vitamin D unless you've got cholesterol. Your sex hormones cannot be made unless you've got enough cholesterol. Your adrenal hormones, your fight and flight hormones are made from cholesterol. For the first time, normal levels of a normal vital body substance is being called a disease. The people that have always had problem with this saturated fat and cholesterol cause heart disease are the heart surgeons. They're the ones that have always been skeptical. It has never been proven. And if you buy Malcolm Kendrick's book, tell you what, he is brutal. He is brutal on medicine. He is brutal on the pharmaceutical companies. He can be. He's a cardiologist. He's a British cardiologist. There's another book called The Great Cholesterol Deception, and it's by Dr. Peter Dingle. He's a guy from Perth. There's another one, it's called The Great Cholesterol Myth by a doctor, he's not a doctor, he's a researcher, Dr. Johnny Bowden. Johnny Bowden. Do you want me to keep going? Huh? How many books do we need? So if someone has a heart attack or a stroke, what do they put on? Cholesterol lowering medication. What does the cholesterol lowering medication do? it blocks the pathway in the liver that the liver uses to make cholesterol. And that same pathway that the liver uses to make cholesterol, it uses to make coenzyme Q10. Have you heard of coenzyme Q10? It's your heart protective enzyme. So a person goes on cholesterol-lowering medication to prevent heart disease, they can actually increase it because they've now lost their coenzyme Q10. Are you ready for the side effects of cholesterol-lowering medication? Muscle wasting, Alzheimer's, dementia, memory loss, and they've just added another one, breast cancer. Interested? If you're on cholesterol-lowering medication, you can stop immediately with no ramifications. There's only two people that have the authority on your medication. That's you and your doctor. There are some medications you have to ease off, especially antidepressants and especially your cortisone, prednisone drugs. But aspirin and blood-thinning medication and cholesterol-lowering medication, you can stop that without any ramifications. But make sure you're implementing the things, where are we over here, to our blood thinners. And we've got a few more on the list to come. Please email me if you find any research that proves saturated fat and cholesterol cause heart disease, because there isn't any. Now, the researcher who presented this theory, his name is Ansel Keys. And Ansel Keys, I think it was in about in the 90s, he did a study on 17 countries. He eliminated all the countries that didn't support the theory that he came up with. So he had to eliminate the Maasai. They live on meat, milk and blood, zero heart disease. Mind you, they don't live a long life. The gut can't handle that for very long, but they don't have heart disease. He had to eliminate the French, how they love their cream butter, cheese, eggs, hardly any heart disease. He had to eliminate the Norwegians, very little heart disease. And the countries that he brought in, it was more the association, it actually wasn't the fat. Fat doesn't make you fat. Fat does not build up in the arteries. What happens is if the arteries are damaged, then LDL is sent to patch it up. Yeah. So what if the arteries are all blocked up? Can they be cleared? Yes. What do you do to clear them? Stop what's causing the build-up. Get the mercury out of your mouth. Start eating lentils. Stop smoking. Start to implement a lifestyle that'll build up that arterial wall. And little by little your HDL will come in and take it away. Last year when I was running a health retreat in Alabama, there was a nutritionist there. She was 69. She looked 59. She looked very good. She said, I've been a nutritionist for 40 years. When I was in university, we were taught, this is the American levels, that anybody with a cholesterol level under 300 was safe. Now, in Australian, that would be probably 7.5. Today, if anyone has a cholesterol level over 200 in America, they're put on cholesterol-lowering medication. And yet 20 years ago, 200 was perfectly safe. Have we changed? And by the way, since they've been putting more people on the cholesterol-lowering medication, because anyone over 200 has to go on it, has it dropped heart disease? No. And what's the definition of insanity? To do what you've always done and expect different results. So in Australia, that's probably about 5.5. So in Australia, if you're above 5.5, you've got to go on cholesterol-lowering medication, or you're supposed to. But if someone goes below 3.5, they can get suicidal and depressed. You see, we need cholesterol. Our brain needs cholesterol. Our brain loves cholesterol. Because our brain is the fattiest organ in the body. A young girl in a health retreat in America said to me, oh, my doctor says my cholesterol levels are dangerously high and I have to go on cholesterol lowering medication. I said, what are they? She said, 191. I said, they're perfectly normal. Now, the Framingham Heart Study. Framingham is a little town in America, and it's a great study because the pharmaceutical company doesn't fund it, the grain industry, the wheat industry doesn't fund it, and the dairy industry and the meat industry doesn't fund it. It's just a little town of Framingham, and it's been studied for over 30 years. People die, more people come on. About 30,000 people have been studied, and they found that people with high cholesterol levels didn't get Alzheimer's. A moment's silence for you to take that one in. People with high cholesterol levels didn't get Alzheimer's because the brain loves cholesterol. Okay, let's move on with our blood thinners. Cayenne pepper. Cayenne pepper is a remarkable herb. Cayenne pepper not only thins the blood, it opens all the little capillaries. It can help to rebuild the walls of the arteries. Garlic. A lot of research has been done on garlic and heart health. Ginger. You can grate ginger and pour boiling water on it. If you think herb teas are insipid compared to tea and coffee, try ginger tea. It'll knock your socks off. And thin your blood, and reduce your inflammation. Omega-3. Omega-3 is a fat that has a very thinning effect on the blood. Where do you find omega-3? Walnuts. You'll find omega-3 in your chia seeds and in your flaxseed. So it's a good idea to include those as part of your diet every day. And what did Hippocrates said? Let food be your medicine, medicine be your food. If you're having adequate water, having that little bit of salt, implementing this into your diet, your blood will be nice and thin. Some people are really scared to tell their specialist or he'll get angry. You know what you do? You just go and sit there and have all the blood tests. One lady said she sits there and just goes like this. What are the results of the blood test? Wow, your blood's really good. Keep up that blood thinner. One lady said she had several blood tests every 3 months, and then after a couple of months she said, well, Doc, I'm brave enough now to tell you what I've been doing. Do you know, it's up to you to prove to your doctor you can get that blood pressure down and you can get that heart strong and that blood thin. It's up to you. There is a herb that strengthens the heart, and it's called the hawthornberry. Psalm 104 verse 14, the Bible says, God gave herbs for the service of man. He gave us cayenne pepper to keep that blood nice and thin, best blood thinner. He gave us the garlic. He gave us the hawthornberry. It's an English herb, but it loves growing in places like Victoria and New Zealand. And a lot of the English brought over the hawthornberry because they make quite nice hedges. I don't know if you've got hawthornberries growing here. The hawthornberry strengthens the heart. If the blood pressure's high, it'll bring it down. If it's low, it'll bring it up. It strengthens the heart. Let me tell you the story of Henry. Henry was a retired judge and came to our health retreat. And he was on blood thinning medication, he was on blood cholesterol medication, he was on blood pressure medication, he was also on blood sugar medication, and he was on medication for gout, and he was also on medication for stomach ulcers. He was in his late 60s. I said, are you interested in coming off your medication? He said, no, thank you very much. I'm very happy with my medication. I always respect everyone's choice. But I gave him the hawthornberry. We get the berries, dried berries, and we make it in a tea. And he was having a litre of that tea a day. At the end of the week, he said, oh, I'll continue the hawthornberry. He rang me up 4 months later. He said, Barbara, I'd like to visit you and get some more hawthornberries. I want to give some to my friends. I said, come for lunch, Henry. When I opened the door, I couldn't believe my eyes. This was a different man. He had lost 20 kilos in 4 months. I said, is that you, Henry?
He said, it is. He said, I can do my coat up now. He said, sit down, Barbara, I have a few stories for you. He said, I went to have my blood pressure taken at the doctor a few weeks ago, and the doctor took it, got up and went to walk out. And Henry said, what are you doing? He said, the machine's broken. He said, why do you say the machine's broken? He said, well, your blood pressure's, what is it, usually 180 on 95. That's on medication, by the way. He said, this machine says your blood pressure is 125 on 70. It must be broken. Henry said, that's my blood pressure now. He said, the doctor has taken me off all my medication because my blood is thin, my cholesterol's back to normal. Did you hear that? He said, my blood sugars are normal, I have no more gout, I have no more stomach ulcers, and the doctor says I don't have to have the knee replacements because my knees are happy. Knees don't like a lot of weight. I said, wow, Henry, that's a fascinating story. Tell me what you have for breakfast. I said, I have some fruit, low GI of course. I have some whole grain cereal, maybe it's buckwheat, maybe it's oats, maybe it's millet, maybe it's quinoa, and then I'll have coconut cream on that. Did you hear that? Cholesterol came down and 20 kilos lost having coconut cream every morning. Do you know the islanders ate coconut cream for years? Every single meal they ate coconut. Never heard of heart disease. He said, and I have some sprinkles of those seeds on top, these ones, and I have a slice of sourdough spelt toast with an avocado and tomato, and sometimes I might have an organic egg. That's not a light breakfast, is it? He said, I don't eat again till lunch, and then I have a salad, I have some vegetables, or baked or steamed, I have some sort of protein, maybe chickpeas or lima beans, and I might have another slice of sourdough spelt toast with avocado. He said, and I do not eat again till breakfast. Very decisive man. He would have been a good judge. When they were at the table, he heard about Michael and his speeding his speeding, and he said, I shouldn't be listening to this. Wow. He said, I do not eat again till breakfast. He said, I do not need to. 20 kilos lost. Would you call that a light diet? That's not a light diet. He's eating very well. But he's eating all of his food in the beginning of the day and the middle of the day. I said, tell me about your exercise program, Henry. He said, I find I can walk another block every week. As his weight drops, as his heart gets and his muscles get stronger, he can go further in less time. So simple. He said, I just want to thank you, Barbara. You've changed my life. I'm almost ready to go back to the bench. He wrote to me. He was of the old school, writing letters. He wrote to me a year later. He said 38 kilos lost. He said, it's like I'm not even on a diet. And of course that has a dramatic effect in getting blood pressure down, is losing the weight. And when you do eat breakfast like a king, lunch like a queen, tea like a pauper, and when you do greatly drop your carbs, eliminate the sugars and the wheats, you will automatically lose weight. You'll lose it without even thinking about it. And isn't that the best diet? The best diet is a diet where you are not hungry. And there are 3 foods that keep the food in the stomach longer. It's fibre, and it's protein, and it's fat. Fat does not cause heart disease. It does not raise cholesterol levels. And we need to eat the healthy fats, which is your coconut oil, your olive oils, your nuts, and your seeds. I don't advocate high fat. I advocate high fibre, lots of vegetables, generous proteins in your legumes, some gluten-free grains, nuts, seeds, and the healthy fats. There's a saying in Australia, it's if you're on a good thing, stick to it. You've heard of that saying? And the Bible says in 1 Thessalonians 5:21, prove all things and hold fast to that which is good. It's old English. Prove it, do it, prove it, and if it works, it's very simple. Just keep doing it. Just keep doing it and you get the results. Remember what I said? It is up to you to prove to your doctor. You can get your blood thin, you can get their blood pressure down. Some people choose to stop their medication as they implement this. Some people choose to work with their doctors and again, all the results will start to show it. But the water must be drunk, the exercise must be done, the dietary changes must be implemented, then you will get the results. After these lectures, you'll be so excited, you probably want to tell everyone. But do you know what the best message you can give to your family and friends is what? What you're doing. So eventually they're going to say, all right, what have you done? That's when you can speak. I'm going to give everyone a break now. It is 7 o'clock. And when we come back, we're going to have a look at those little chemical messengers in your body called hormones. And we will also have a question and answer time at the end. Thank you. Thank you.